There's something deeply comforting about the taste of Coleman's mustard, that fiery yellow condiment that for generations has been synonymous with British dining. It wasn't just a condiment, it was a symbol of pride, tradition, and British craftsmanship. But behind its iconic tins lies a story of innovation, pride, and ultimately, a heartbreaking betrayal. Join me as we explore the rise and fall of Coleman's mustard and the enduring connection it had with the heart of Norwich and British identity. The tale of Coleman's mustard begins in 1814 with Jeremiah Colman, a visionary who, at the time, took over a modest flour mill in Stoke Holy Cross, just outside Norwich. However, Jeremiah wasn't content with simply grinding wheat. He saw potential in mustard, a condiment that had been beloved in Britain since medieval times. Yet mustard back then was notoriously inconsistent. The mustard seeds were ground by hand using a mortar and pestle, producing a coarse and uneven powder. This meant that the flavor and heat of the mustard varied dramatically from batch to batch. Jeremiah Colman, with his mill expertise, saw an opportunity to perfect this much-loved product. He developed a new mechanized method of grinding the mustard seeds into a fine, uniform powder. This wasn't just for efficiency, it was about unlocking the full potential of the mustard seed. The finer the grind, the more surface area of the seed was exposed, releasing the mustard's natural oils that give it that characteristic eye-watering heat. But that wasn't all. Jeremiah's blend of brown and white mustard seeds, carefully combined with turmeric, created the distinctive bright yellow hue that would later become the hallmark of the brand. This combination of taste, heat, and color was groundbreaking. It was nothing like any mustard Britain had seen before. By 1823, Jeremiah had brought his nephew James into the business, forming the company known as J&J Coleman. From there, the company began its ascent. In 1854, Coleman moved its production to Carrow, a site along the River Wensum in Norwich, a strategic location that allowed for easy access to water and transportation links, crucial for importing mustard seeds and exporting the finished product. Carrow would go on to become the heart of Coleman's operations for the next 165 years. The key to Coleman's success, however, wasn't simply in their mustard-making skills, it was their brilliant marketing strategy. In 1866, Coleman received a royal warrant from Queen Victoria, making them the official supplier of mustard to the royal family. This was a momentous achievement. It was a mark of quality that instantly became a badge of honor. A royal warrant wasn't just a fancy certificate to hang on a wall. It meant that your product was good enough for the Queen herself. For Coleman's, it was the marketing breakthrough they had been waiting for. Every British household now aspired to have the same mustard that graced the royal table. Soon, the unmistakable yellow tins began to appear everywhere in Norwich. They adorned not just shop fronts and delivery vans, but even the local football team's kits. Norwich City Football Club, known as the Canaries, proudly wore their yellow shirts, further cementing the association between the city and the mustard company. It wasn't just mustard, it was Norwich's identity. As the city's pride, the Coleman family went beyond just business and took care of their workforce. They provided housing for workers, established schools, and set up healthcare facilities. The company even built social clubs and sports facilities, fostering a sense of community among the thousands of workers at Carrow. Norwich became a place where generations of families worked in the factory, passing down the pride of creating the finest mustard in Britain. The late 19th century saw Coleman's mustard become a household name across the entire nation. The famous bull's head logo, introduced in 1855, symbolized strength and quality, making Coleman's the first truly national mustard brand in Britain. The cylindrical yellow tins weren't just practical for preserving the mustard's potency, they were instantly recognizable. They stood out on every grocery shelf, and people knew exactly what they were getting: a consistent, fiery, and distinctly British mustard. But it wasn't just the quality that endeared Coleman's to the British public. The mustard became an essential part of British cuisine. Whether it was spread generously on a Sunday roast or accompanying ham sandwiches, Coleman's mustard became intertwined with British culinary traditions. Classic dishes like Welsh rarebit, cheese and pickle plates, and even the famous devils on horseback all found their perfect match in Coleman's mustard. It wasn't just a condiment, it was part of the fabric of British family life. Even during the tumultuous times of World War II, Coleman's continued to supply mustard not just for civilians, but also for British soldiers around the globe. As British troops fought in North Africa, Europe, and the Far East, a tin of Coleman's mustard was a small but comforting reminder of home. In a world torn apart by war, that little tin of yellow mustard carried with it a sense of normality, of family dinners, and of the British home front. As post-war Britain began to rebuild, Coleman's continued to hold a special place in the hearts of the people. By the 1950s and 1960s, Coleman's mustard had become a staple in almost every British kitchen. It was no longer just a luxury item. It was as essential as salt and pepper, as fundamental to British cooking as tea and bread. Coleman's mustard became a symbol of British identity. While the French may have had their sophisticated Dijon mustard and the Americans their mild yellow stadium mustard, Britain had Coleman's, sharp, uncompromising, and bold. Just like the British people, the company continued to innovate throughout the years, introducing ready-made mustard in jars for those who couldn't be bothered with the powder, though purists still swore by the classic tin. The mustard came in different varieties, mild, French, and whole grain, but the original powder in the yellow tin remained the flagship product. Coleman's mustard continued to represent the very essence of British taste, and for many, it was the product that defined their culinary experience. By the 1990s, however, things began to change. In 1995, Coleman's was sold to Unilever, a massive multinational corporation, ending 180 years of independence. The promises made by Unilever about keeping production in Norwich were reassuring, but as time went on, it became clear that things were shifting. The personal connection between the company and the city began to fade. The once proud family-run business was now just another asset in a multinational portfolio. Over the next 2 decades, subtle changes began to surface. Longtime customers started noticing that Coleman's didn't taste quite the same. Some claimed it wasn't as hot as it used to be. Others said the texture was off. Although Unilever denied any changes to the recipe, the complaints persisted. Could it be that cost-cutting measures had altered the formula? Or was it simply that people's memories were romanticizing the mustard of their youth? The erosion of the Coleman's identity reached its peak in 2018, when Unilever announced the closure of the Caro Works factory in Norwich. After 160 years, the site would cease operations by the end of 2019. This announcement devastated the local community. It wasn't just about losing jobs, it was about losing something that had been a part of Norwich's identity for over a century. The factory that had once been the heart of the city was now a shadow of its former self. The decision to close Caro Works marked the end of an era. The promises made by Unilever were broken, and the last batches of Coleman's mustard were produced in Norwich in 2019. For many residents of Norwich, the closure was more than just an economic loss. It was an emotional one. It was as if the city had lost a part of itself. The rise and fall of Coleman's mustard is a heartbreaking reminder of how easily tradition can be uprooted by the forces of corporate greed. What once was a proud, locally owned brand that symbolized the very essence of British identity is now just another multinational product. For the people of Norwich, the mustard they once proudly produced now represents what was lost: a heritage, a community, and a legacy that will never be the same. If this story of Coleman's mustard has sparked some memories of your own, please like, comment, and subscribe for more nostalgic content. Share your thoughts, your memories, and let us know if you still remember the taste of that unmistakable yellow mustard.